Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today we're going to discuss a topic of the one question that no one really wants to ask. I don't know if it's really that people don't want to ask. They don't want the answer, and they probably don't want to deal with the answer as much as they don't want to ask the question. But anyways, I just got back from, and by the way, if you're watching this live or you're watching this on video, you can see I got one of my girls with me. This is Paris. We are at my beach house here today, and she's joining me. It's a little hot out here, but nonetheless, if you hear some panting in the background, it's because I got one of my girls. This is one of my little French bulldogs, Paris, with me. Anyways, one of the reasons I think that this has become such an important topic is because it's a question that doesn't get often asked, because a lot of people don't want to have the responsibility, frankly, of answering this question or being held accountable for it. And I'll get into those in just a minute. Let me give you the reason why I'm having this conversation with you today and where I think it's so important for all of us. So I just got back from another trip. I was up in Nashville, and I got invited to an opportunity to be in a very exclusive, which is really, really cool. Very grateful for the opportunity, mastermind session. And in those moments, you really have an opportunity to utilize collective genius. And what that means is you utilize the brilliance of other men and women who are very successful in their different rights to quickly help you elevate and level your own game up. Motion set aside, and you just get to level up based on everyone else's experience. So fantastic opportunity for myself. And in doing so, when that happens, you get put on what's called a hot seat. So when my hot seat came, one of the first things you do is you give a little bit of a state of the union, a background on who you are, and then maybe some of the things that you're working on, and maybe some obstacles that you have. And of course, in some of my description, I share with the group that I am a functional medicine practitioner, 30 plus years, chiropractic, acupuncture, and functional nutrition. That I'm also a speaker. I go around teaching. I teach other docs about gut health and longevity. And then I'm also a keynote speaker. And this is the part that kind of caught the eye of some of them. And as many of you know, when I do my keynote speaking, almost exclusively it is to entrepreneurs. People who are very similar to myself, who are always moving and grooving, and realize that the essence of being an entrepreneur will really fall back to how much energy you have in life, to be creative, to go for more, to keep pushing to that next level. So with that being said, when we get done the talk, one of the younger docs, there's a bunch of doctors in the room, different trades, etc. One of the guys in the room, one of the youngest in the group, who's probably in his late 30s, came up to me and asked me this question. I was very surprised, but I loved the question. And he said, Doc, you have an opportunity to speak to entrepreneurs all over the country. You coach and mentor many of them about health. What is the most common regret that they have? Now, with that being said, I'll preface, I don't like to live in with regret. I don't think that's a good emotion, but I understood what the question was. What is the biggest thing? If they could do things differently, what would they do? And very quickly, I answered this question because it is very, very obvious every single time that the most obvious thing, the most consistent thing across the board that I hear every single time from my entrepreneurs, from my very successful people out there, is that if they could have done something different, they would have taken better care of themselves. And that sounds like something we all know, but I want to dive in a little bit here today to get to the reason why, one, we don't, and what we can do about it, because it doesn't go away. We don't get younger, and age is not on our side. We can work with it, though. We can do things to make age maybe not such a big problem over the long haul, and a bare minimum make sure that we can maximize every day, every year that we're going to be here. So with that being said, let's keep on plugging away here. I'll tell you this. The big question should be, why is this the biggest regret? And what does this really look like? So when we scanned the room, this gentleman and I started to have these little, one-off conversations. I would be able to look at some of these other people in the room. There's one particular guy there, and he was the kindest, most generous individual probably in the room, with his knowledge and his information, full of knowledge and wisdom. And my heart fell for him a little bit because I could tell that he had a really hard time moving. You and I may take for granted the fact that we can lift our heads up straight and look behind us and move in all directions. He no longer could do that. And that's not uncommon. I'll see it for people that are at their desk for a long period of time, or just have professions that their postures are forward and they start to lose range of motion. And when I was having a conversation with the young guy, what I told him was that right there isn't a now problem. It's been a problem for 20 or 30 years, and no one ever addressed it. There was never accountability for it, and there was never a strategy to unfold it. Now, what does it look like in real life? So this is the conversation that continued to happen with this young gentleman. I tell him that oftentimes when I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, I'll have them go through 3 quick tests, physical tests, in the middle of a talk. I'm doing a 90-minute keynote talk, and I'll get up and I'll have everyone in the audience stand up, and I have them do 3 tests to see how well they're doing and how well we can predict their future when it comes to their physical bodies. First one I'll have them do is stand up tall and see if they can bend over and touch their toes, which for many of us, no big deal. And he said, without bending your knees? That's what he said to me. And I said, yeah, without bending your knees, you should be able to easily touch your toes. And at 30-something years old, he said, I can't do that. And I said, well, the problem starts now. Add 3 decades to that, and you've got a big problem, a life-changing, life-altering problem because you are too tight today and you're not addressing it. And this is where we overlook some of these fundamentally simple things that we could be doing today to take action to the best we can ensure a future that it looks bright, a future that looks like, hey, when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, I'll be able to pick up my grandkids, go golfing, or whatever it may be. And it's going to come down to 2 things why this happens repetitively and becomes one of the biggest problems with especially my entrepreneurs. And I'm sure with everyone else out there as well, but especially my entrepreneurs. And here's what happens. When we lean away from our health, it is not uncommon that we lean into something else. Meaning that since our health is getting worse and worse, we kind of got the 3 categories of life: health, wealth, and relationships. Often we lean into the one that's probably the easiest for us. And for entrepreneurs, the easiest one thing to do is to work harder. So they work harder on their businesses, on their wealth building, but not on their personal bodies, not on their personal business. And oftentimes not in their relationship business either. So that being said, let me dive into what we can do about this, the simple reasons why this is taking place. And I'll give you some examples, some other things that are really successful along the ways that I see. So it's going to come down to 2 things. If you want to predict the success of the future, of your future health, it's going to come down to 2 things. One, do you have a strategy that's significant, very much like you have for your business right now? If you are a business owner or you're a business manager, or even if you're the business of your household, you have a strategy, you have a plan in action, and you are measured against your plan. What does that look like for most of us in today's environment of health? Most likely, it's going to look like lab tests. You take a whole bunch of lab tests and you see where you are. You look at your bank statement, you look at your profit and loss statement, you collect some data, and then you create a very specific strategy to improve it, to move it in the direction that you want to go. What if you knew right now that you had too much debt on your credit card? What do you start to do? Typically, you say, I'm not going to use it anymore. I'm not going to do those actions anymore. And I'm going to make a little more money so I can pay this down. And that's what I call a standard, that you create standards. But if you have no way to measure, you have no standards. Most of these gentlemen and women that I work with, I'll typically ask them straight out, and you can ask yourself this or answer this to yourself. Is your strategy for your business equivalent to or greater than the strategy you have for your health? Listen, I already know the answer. I know the answer. It's not even close. Your strategy for your business is tenfold what you have the strategy for your business. And listen, if you are one of the unique ones, listen to this. And there's a good chance that some of you are unique, listen to this because that's why you're listening to this. Yeah, anyways, if you are one of the unique ones, hats off to you. I commend you. Keep rocking and rolling. But if you're like most people, your strategy for business is weak. It's not a strategy. It is, I'm not broke. I'll wait until something breaks, and then I might deal with it. I'm here to tell you, after 30 years of practice, I'm telling you, we want to avoid as much as we possibly can, which means planning and having strategy 10, 20, 30 years in advance of those problems showing up. Because when they show up, like the gentleman I just discussed with the head, he can't move back. There's no quick fix for that, folks. Can we improve things? Yes, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But for the most part, can we restore all that? No, that's a 30-year problem. 30 years ago, he decided that somewhere along the way, it was okay. He justified being too tight. And I'm just talking about one thing, folks. I could go with your weight, your cardiovascular ability, your strength, your posture, your ability to move. All of these different things are part of your health. Your labs, your blood pressure going up. And listen, if taking blood pressure medication doesn't make you healthy, it means you just borrowed a credit card for your health. That's all that means. All right, so the number one thing is this, that there's rarely a strategy. And it's so easy to have a strategy. You just got to collect some data. That's number one. And number two, and this is where I think big, especially when it comes to health, and especially my entrepreneurs, my high achievers out there. So I hope you're listening closely. The big issue here is accountability. No alpha dog out there has anyone holding them accountable. I fall into that same category. Very few people can hold me accountable. My wife does a very good job, although it's not her job to do so. So what does that mean? I have to have either labs holding me accountable or other health coaches, which I do. So those are the things I'm talking about. If you do not have anyone that can hold you accountable for saying, hey, my friend, it looks like you put on 15 pounds, and you are not offended by that, and you are listening to them knowing that that's coming from love. It's coming from a place of, listen, man, I want you to be the best version of yourself, but you've gained weight, you don't move that good anymore, you're a little bit cranky, a little more tired than you used to be, you're not moving quite as free, we can't play golf as much, you're certainly not going to be able to pick up your kids in another 5 or 10 years. That accountability is lacked across the board. We have accountability in business all the time. We have accountability through our numbers. You don't produce, you get yourself in trouble. You can't pay your bills, you get yourself in trouble. And eventually, with our health, and often too early, and that's my point here, too early, you can't pay your bills. You can't do things like lift up little kids or little dogs or whatever that may be. So I think those are the two most predictable parts of the future of your health, or whether or not you have a very defined strategy along with some level of accountability. So and I think everyone listening to this, I think you get that. I think that is something that you understand, you comprehend. I don't even think you argue with it. So then why do we still come up short? And I think it comes down to this. I think the standards that we set, although I know, and I think that they should be super high, I think the standards that we set on some of them have become so far out of reach, we're not willing to take the first step. So we think we have to eat the entire cake versus just take a piece of it. And I want to give you some examples. So recently, in fact, yesterday, I had a young lady come into my office who is going to start to do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Love it. Absolutely love it. I think everyone should spend some time doing some Jiu-Jitsu. Anyways, she was kind of disappointed. She's like, yeah. And I asked her, how often do you think you're going to be able to get onto the mat? She said, just once a week. And she kind of said it in like it's not really going to do anything. And I beg to differ. I beg to differ big time. Meaning this, if she does Jiu-Jitsu one time a week for the next year, that means she's done Jiu-Jitsu 50 times more this year than she did last year. Is that a massive benefit? Will she have massive skills that she did not have before? Will she get fitter, stronger? Will she get her mind in the right frame of mind of understanding some self-defense and offense? Absolutely. The challenge is most people think, well, if I'm going to start something new like that, I have to go 3 times a week, an hour every time. No. And I think it's part of what inhibits us. I'm going to give you another example. I have another gentleman came in, same thing yesterday. We're talking about limbering up. This very conversation, and he's all into it, but he's a little depressed because, not really depressed, but he's bummed out thinking, man, I let this go too far. I can barely touch my feet anymore. I can't touch my toes anymore. And the truth is, it was a funny conversation, but not funny. He literally said he's having a hard time wiping his butt. And listen, you think that's funny or that's not you, but it is. If you can't move your body now, one day it's going to be hard to twist and rotate. Maybe too much for this podcast, but nonetheless, it gets real. So anyways, we start talking. He said, I know I need to do some yoga. I said, what holds you back? It's like, I don't have enough time. And I said, well, could you carve out 1 hour a week? He's like, yeah, I could do that. So we mapped it down. So I said, are the resources? Can you afford going? He said, yeah. So why don't you do this then? Why don't you get a yoga instructor that will come to your house? So it is 1 hour. It's not 2 hours going to the yoga class, taking the class, and coming back. Why don't you get an instructor that comes to your house? And here's the benefit. If you did yoga 50 times this year, 1 time a week, and you did 50 sessions of yoga this year, you'd be significantly more limber and healthier than you were last year. So that means you would be anti-aging. And I think this is where sometimes we get in our own way. We think working out means it has to always be an hour long, that we have to do it 3 to 5 times a week. If you can get there, fantastic. How about some is better than none? How about move your body every single day? How about go for a walk every day after dinner, just a walk, 10 minutes? You start doing that, you will change blood sugar levels. There's so many things we can do. But when we think, and this is, I think, a trap for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially seasoned veterans, you think that you started off successful. You forget that you did not. Most of you started scrambling and scraping. You started off broke, you stayed broke for a long period of time, and eventually you started getting successful over time. And it took a long time and a long effort to get there, and it wasn't easy along the way. when you start to approach your health that way and understand it is one scratch, one punch, one step at a time, and give yourself that permission and that grace. Like, all right, I'm just going to get going here. And some is better than none. If we do that, we can have super massive success. Even the gentleman I talked to just a moment about that was super generous. He was at the mastermind. He was giving back to so many of us that were just in a different place than he was in terms of success. If he started today doing yoga at 70 years old, 1 time a week, 50 times this year, he'd have better range of motion next year than he did this year. So my point being, no matter where you are, you can make improvements. You just got to raise the standards. And I'll give you a really kind of cool, positive story as we wrap up here. So I have another gentleman that came in yesterday. Had a good day yesterday. Gentleman comes in yesterday, and he just got back from a month trip over in Europe. I think he was in Italy, doing golf. That's his thing. He loves to golf. He's going around with his guys, and his family goes with him. And anyways, he gets back, and he says, yes, I got to get my adjustment, of course, because I'm about to take another trip. And that is his standard. He comes in for his chiropractic adjustment before and after every trip because he knows the trips are hard. He's 80 years old. He just turned 80, and his next trip is going to Alaska next week to meet his 50-year-old son so they can celebrate their birthdays together fishing in Alaska. The reason I'm sharing with you, one, it's freaking awesome that this 80-year-old dude is flying around the world and has the energy to do it, and it has the wherewithal to prepare himself for what's next. So he's on an adjustment schedule every 3 weeks. So ask yourself, these are some of the things that you're doing. Are you out there getting a massage once a month? Are you getting a chiropractic adjustment? Are you doing anything to help your body recover and repair from certain things that you're doing now? And maybe you don't like either one of those. Maybe it's acupuncture for you. Is it some type of physical therapy that allows you to elevate what you do? This is on top of your workouts, folks. So this gentleman, every 3 weeks when he's local, when he's here in town, gets his adjustment. If he's traveling, he gets an adjustment just prior and always when he returns. Why? Because he knows those are tough on his body. And he wants to be able, we've talked about this for years. Said, why would you inhibit the potential for you to go on your next golf journey? Why don't you raise the bar so there is no age limit here? And one of the secrets I tell him every day, and I'll say the same thing to you guys as we wrap up here, is that whatever you're doing this year, you're going to have to do more next year. That's the truth. You're going to have to do more to just get barely the results you're getting today. Then that's because there's this thing called aging. So if you're willing to do more, you're going to be able to get more out of life. You're going to be able to do more out of life. And quite frankly, the more energy you have, frankly, you're going to enjoy life more. And the people around you are going to enjoy you more the more energy you have. It's tough to hear, but hear this out. If you are unwell, you are unwell or unfit for the relationships in your life as well. And don't get mad at me saying that, but we all know that each one of us wants the best version of the people we care and love for. We care and love for them in sickness and in health, and we want the best version. And if you are not your best version, your fittest, your most mentally acute version of yourself, level it up, my friends, because everyone around you wants you to be there. If you want to do labs, we can help you with labs. And so if you want to start creating strategy, very simple. And I'm not doing this podcast for this reason, but if you want to do labs, listen, for whether you're male or female, we have a comprehensive panel that we've thought through it all to help you avoid the 4 horsemen of disease. Those are the 4 big boys. That's cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of those guys, cancers. It are not tests for these, but we know the writing on the wall when we look at the labs. If you have those labs, we can create strategy so you can start to move in a direction away from those 4 horsemen and start to help level you up. Very simple. I'll make sure there's a link below. We can help you anywhere in the country. We can send them out, send a requisite, then we send on a Zoom, very similar to this. All right, with that being said, folks, keep doing the thing. Keep sharing this out. Keep spreading the love. And, of course, continue to take deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.